Hi, Dr. Reagan Robertson, CCO of Productive Dentist Academy here, and I have a question for you. Are you finding it hard to get your team aligned to your vision, but you know you deserve growth just like everybody else? That's why we've created the PDA Productivity Workshop. For nearly 20 years, PDA workshops have helped dentists just like you align their teams, get control of scheduling, and create productive practices that they love walking into every day. Just imagine how you will feel when you know your schedule is productive, your systems are humming, and your team is aligned to your vision. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. We can help. Visit productivedentist.com/workshop. That's productivedentist.com/workshop to secure your seats now.
Once the phone rings, it's then passed off to the admin team. They need to then start that relationship with the patient and build the trust, build the relationship. What's interesting is that most team members don't realize how critical their role is with internal marketing. It really is about the ultimate patient experience.
Welcome to the Everyday Practices Podcast. I'm Reagan Robertson, and my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, and I are on a mission to share the stories of everyday dentists who generate extraordinary results using practical, proven methods you can take right into your own dental practice. If you're ready to elevate patient care and produce results that are anything but ordinary, buckle up and listen in.
Doctors, are you thinking about marketing your practice in any way? Stop. Before you proceed, you do not get to pass go and collect $200 until you listen to this episode of Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. Hello, I am your co-host, Reagan Robertson, here with the fantastic, the marketing maven himself, Dr. Chad Johnson. Chad, how are you today?
I'm doing great, but come on, we have Sara Hansen here today. How cool is that, Reagan?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's okay.
Are you kidding me? Listeners, you can't see our faces, but my smile couldn't be any brighter. We have had Sara on before. Sara Hansen is a fractional CMO marketing consultant with Productive Dentist Academy with a lot of dental experience in addition to storytelling, marketing strategy, and the like experience. So we are thrilled to have you on this podcast today. And it's born from a little bit of frustration. Hi, Sara.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with both of you. We always have a good time.
Yeah.
I
And
agree.
just for the listener's perspective, Sara is specific to my marketing, is my marketing. What's the word for it? Marketing coach, marketing overseer, marketing.
I'm your marketing fractional CMO. So that means I work with your internal marketing manager, who is Dean. I love Dean. He's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have kind of a little sweet spot happening because of how we do stuff, which most offices wouldn't be interested in doing, and some offices would be interested in doing it, but probably won't. I actually bit off and gave it a go, and that's probably a unique situation in our office, having an internal marketing person that you can, share duties, share collaboration of ideas and stuff like that. So that's just that's not for most listeners. That might be a 201 kind of discussion, but that is definitely a fun dynamic that we have.
Yeah. But Chad, I love that you bring that up a little bit, because how many years did I keep saying to you, hey, Chad, I'd love to have updated photos. Hey, Chad, can we do this on social media?
Yeah.
Hey, Chad, right? And you're always like, oh, yeah. And
We're all about it in theory.
And then the next month will go by and I'm like, hey, did you forget about me, right? But what I love about working with Dean, and I think when doctors get to a point where their practices are bigger, to bring in a person or to have a person on your team who oversees some social media content, who can get the photos internally, they're there every single day. So they're such an asset to you. Where I, can help support that is working with Dean and saying, hey, let's tie what's happening internally to everything that we're doing externally, Chad, with all of your campaigns. We'll keep the messaging congruent. I work with Dean, help, do things for him. And it's been the best thing you did as far as marketing goes, right?
Absolutely. Yes. It's definitely upped our game. So I told you before we hit record that there was going to be, I had a pop question for you. So here's what I thought was interesting. I was talking with a group about internal marketing. And in dentistry, we talk about internal marketing as though it's to our patients. But what I learned when I typed in internal marketing on a bigger sense, so I was just kind of curious with your background in marketing altogether in a general sense, when companies talk about internal marketing as opposed to dentistry, it seems as though they're talking about internal marketing including your workforce.
Yeah.
And that's a unique thing, because in dentistry, we've got this niche of discussion of internal marketing, meaning that we take care of, getting the people within our group. So I'm just curious, is there a way that dentists could use getting the team to be brand ambassadors as opposed to just your internal base of patients? That's an area that I don't think is explored all that much within dentistry, because we hyperfixate on getting the patients to be your brand ambassadors, and we could have a brand ambassador index, wink, or something like that line. So what's your thoughts regarding that part that's untapped within internal marketing?
Yeah, Chad, I love that you bring this up because it really isn't discussed in the industry at all. But what I love about it is when it comes to internal marketing, the overall view, or what is internal marketing, is creating the ultimate experience, customer experience, patient experience. But what goes into creating that, that's where more tactics come in, right? But what we know is that in order to create an ultimate patient experience requires the team to be aligned with what each other do to make sure the patient experience flows perfectly, the communication sticks, that there's no one drops the ball, right? But what we also know about team members is that they really are an extension of who you are, what the practice represents. So I do think that they are a critical piece into being, as you called it, brand ambassadors, because patients have such a good relationship with them. A lot of times the patient spends more time with the team than they actually do with the doctor. So
hopefully,
So if a team member is out in the community and sees the patient, or even they take their child to soccer and they happen to talk to the next mom next door, right? And oh yeah, we can help with that. We do that every day. We're experts. They really are, again, that critical piece of, just like we ask for internal referrals, your team can help build the practice just as much. And I always say, when I travel for PDA to clients' offices or to a speaking engagement, whenever I'm traveling and I'm representing PDA, even if I'm on a flight, and there are times I don't want to speak to someone, right? But I always make sure that I am professional, because that's our core value, and that I'm always representing PDA appropriately, because that is an extension of what I'm doing. And I would challenge the team to do the same. They can have conversations with people in the community. And that's a great way to build relationships, but also to build the authority and the trust that patients are looking for.
Amen. There it is. I mean, that's just an interesting thought that I think a lot of dentists don't think about, because we hyperfixate internal marketing to mean getting patients to refer. And it's the people who love you the most actually should be your employees. Reagan, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you've taken it in a really great direction, because the frustration that I mentioned at the beginning is when we think of marketing, you're right. We think of new patient acquisition through oftentimes external means. So what our website is doing, what our direct mail is doing, or digital advertising. And it's very frustrating to me, because I appreciate spending money in a productive manner. I like to look at what the output, what happens from that output. And unfortunately, if that handoff isn't clear, that money is not only wasted, but it can impact the reputation, which, Chad, goes to what you were saying. If you've got brand ambassadors, that elevates your brand. If the team is not aware of how we're expecting to show up out in the world, that can impact the reputation as well. So, Sara, for listeners, how do you define the difference between external and internal marketing? And why is it so important to start with internal first?
Yeah. Well, external marketing, the goal of external marketing is simply to create awareness and ultimately get the phone to ring. That's it. That's where external marketing really stops. Once the phone rings, because I'm a runner, I use the analogy a lot of like a baton relay. Once the phone rings, it's then passed off to the admin team. And, they need to then start that relationship with the patient and build the trust, build the relationship. What's interesting is that most team members don't realize how critical their role is with internal marketing. It really is about the ultimate patient experience. And what I often hear from doctors when we have a slow time come up in their schedules is they'll give me a call, Sara, what can we do to attract more new patients? My schedule is slow. And the first thing I tell them to do is what is happening internally. So I give them the guidance of, do you have any patients with outstanding treatment that has not been accepted? We need to have a system in place that we're reaching out to the patients, that we're knowing why they're not accepting treatment. Do you have any patients that have continuing care that's, fallen through the 6-month or the 9-month or the 3-month? Let's get them on a call. If we're trying to increase implants into the practice, have you reached out to every single patient that's previously had an extraction? Do they know that you do implants? So those are the types of things that first, I tell the doctors, hey, let's get your team on board. We're going to start there first. Reagan, I love that you use the term cost of acquisition. That is a term that most doctors don't realize, is that every single time we launch an external campaign, there is a cost attached to that, which, that's okay. We have marketing budgets. That's how we become the authority in the area. That's all part of the plan. However, there is a cost of acquisition to that. So, for example, one of the numbers that even I've explained to Chad is, hey, if your cost of acquisition for a patient is $200 through that particular campaign, if your phone rings and your team member can't get the patient in the door, well, you've now spent $200 to try and acquire that patient. And now you have to spend $200 more to try and make up for that. So again, while that's all part of the plan, that's where that internal piece of call conversion, that is internal marketing. That is where it becomes so critical, because if we cannot get the patient in and we know that we're spending money to get the patient in, then that's where the doctors are like, oh, wait a second, that's costing me more money than I thought. So we balance out the cost of acquisition, bringing that down by really upping all those internal systems. And there's a lot of those that we can talk about as well.
Let's dive into some of those particular systems, because this came up not that long ago with a doctor's practice who wanted to invest a significant amount into some external marketing campaigns. They had some new technology coming in the practice. We're very excited about it, and rightfully so. Mm-hmm. And in the discussion process, it came to light that they did not have room for hygiene appointments. So They were really eager to start the brand awareness campaign and the new patient special, but had no place to put them. So not everybody has a dean, not everybody has an in-house marketing coordinator. So, where can dentists start? What types of systems, like break it down so that we understand with the staff that perhaps they have in place right now, where are those opportunities sitting right now?
Yeah. So I would say your very first step would be, one, make sure that your admin team has the tools to have good phone skills and to be able to get the patients in. We want to make sure that the team understands how to listen to the patient's needs and offer solutions for what they're looking for. What I tell teams all the time is, hey, you're not knocking on doors. They called you because they need something. And what the patient is trying to identify every time they're calling different practices is they're trying to figure out, is this practice right for me? So you need to first listen, what are their needs, and then find the solutions and let them know that they called the right place. And hey, yes, we're happy to help you with that. So that's the first step. The second step is making sure that our schedules have room for the new patients. So whether you need to find blocked times, one of the doctors that I work with, he said, well, my new patient goal is 50 new patients a month. And I said, great. How many new patient slots do you have? And he goes, 24. And I said, well, then you are never going to hit 50 new patients a month because you don't even have 50 spots to put them, right? So again, making sure that your schedule can accommodate the patients that do need your help. Because nothing is more frustrating for a patient calling who needs support or who needs something and they can't get in for a month. So we want
Sarah.
to, yeah.
So let me push back for a minute from a dentist perspective. What if they had 24 slots and they wanted 50 potential new patients and then they wanted to be selective from that 50? I'm just trying to think, like, what if the person said, I want the 50 calls? Because I suppose the world's your oyster, right? If that's what you want. But that you could get 50 potential patients to come in the door, but then they call and say, hey, we have a family of 5, and you could say, well, we see 18 and older. Or if someone says, hey, I need 10 dental implants, and you go, that's amazing, but we don't do dental implants. Or I want a denture. Oh, well, we don't do dentures. Like, to actually get the call and maybe screen it on the phone. You want to get them in the chair so that way you can talk about stuff, but maybe if the front desk person is on point, is it possible that you could just say, no, we want potentially 50, and then we want to choose our favorite 24 from that 50? Does that make sense? I'm being frustrated, but let's say dentists are kind of that way. What if we said we want that?
Well, let's be honest. Dentists want what they want, right? They like to do specific procedures. So Chad, I'm so glad you asked this, because let's say maybe we're attracting 25 new patients through external means. Now, again, while external marketing is great, we're not picking and choosing what's coming in, right? We're putting the messaging out and people are aligning with it and taking action. However, how do we grow a new patient number with the patients that we really want is actually another internal system. And that is through internal referrals. When we ask the patients that we love, that are great patients, that are doing the procedures that we love to do, we tell them to refer their friends and family. Guess what? Now you have 25 new patients that are coming from external, and you have 25 new patients coming from internal, but they're the patients that, one, are coming to you already with a level of trust because their best friend referred them to you. And now they're more of the patients that we want to see. So now you have your 50 new patients. The revenues are what they should be. But now it really is attracting what you want. And I will tell you, when we work with doctors that are further in their career, it is a completely different marketing strategy. It's no longer about just getting butts in the chair, it really is more strategic. And yes, we can do a lot of external campaigns that are more focused, but what we find is this is where those internal systems really help level up the practice to attract the patients that they want and what they deserve. And Chad, this also is a little bit for you too when I talk to you about internal referrals. What's great about internal referrals is, one, we don't really have the cost of acquisition, right? So you're taking that away. But let's say that your average new patient value is $5,000, right? Well, if you're exactly right. And what's great is that, when I say, so here's how the marketing strategy comes in, where Chad, you and I work really close together, is if you say, Sarah, I want to grow my practice by, $100,000 this year or whatever it is, then what I do is I backstep into that and say, okay, if we know that we need to increase revenue, we know that, Chad, each of your new patients are worth $5,000. We know that if we can attract, 10% of your new patients are coming from internal services. Hey, now I can grow you $100,000 a year without you having to increase any external marketing spend, no more cost of acquisition. And now we have a robust internal referral system that I get to help work with your team on. We're growing the practice. And that is the power of internal referrals and an overall marketing strategy that works for what you need.
Especially for the niche service types of people. It sounds like that would resonate well with, let's say, tongue-tied people where there's a community.
Yes.
They've had 5 successes and then they start sending 50 and then those 50 send 500. And now all of a sudden, all you're doing is tongue-tie laser service. That's just one example where, like a niche service would rock versus, oh man, he does occlusal composites. No kidding. Every dentist does those, Now, if you give a good shot, that might be a general thing that people are going to comment on, especially if there's 2 dentists in town and the other guy is really mean and you are really gentle. That's not exactly a service. It's just you're being service minded.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, what we know about patients is they don't always know what they need. So I know even when my children, have had different things, I didn't know that they needed their tonsils out until, so I'm not Googling tonsil removal. I'm Googling, why won't my kid sleep at night? Right.
Sure.
So, and it's the same thing with dentistry. And so, but how I heard, oh, my daughter probably needs her tonsils out. I was talking to another mom at the park and we were comparing stories. And she said, oh my gosh, you need to go see this guy. Right. My daughter had the same things and she, we saw him and whatever. So it's the same thing with dentistry. If you have a patient that has, all on 4s and, whatever, I love that you brought up the tongue tie. That is all about word of mouth with community because most mothers don't know that their child has a tongue tie. They know symptoms, right? Yeah. So it really is, that's how we grow those very niche-y, or, specific services in marketing is through that type of system.
Mm-hmm. Good. Thanks, Sarah. Cool.
So let's stay on this, as we would say, capturing the low hanging fruit, like looking internal first to see. I mean, Chad, how did that make you feel? Think if you could increase your productivity by not having to seek external marketing and doing some team training instead, I can only imagine how that would feel for you.
Well, it seems more predictable and dialed in as opposed to, I always hated throwing money to the marketing gods and hoping that they could, bless me with patients, but not being able to track it. I didn't like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's stay on that path. I know that there are different states have different rules for how you reach out and ask for referrals. What are some of the ways that dentists can, begin this process and looking at how they're handling referrals right now? What are some ideas?
Yeah, so it's really simple. Every single state, you can have a conversation about internal referrals. Where each state differentiates itself is, can you give the patient a gift? So a lot of offices will have a referral program where if they refer a friend and family, they will get a $50 Amazon gift card. So it's a little bit of an incentive, and those work great. I also have, like, California as a state, I know in particular that you can't really do compensation, or it has to be equal to every patient. You can't just single patients out. So there are some rules that you always want to check within your state. But when you have patients that you have changed their lives and they love you, you know what I'm talking about, Chad. The patients that bring you treats, the patients that rave about you, the patients, those are the patients that will constantly be your solid referral source because they love you. They don't care if they have an Amazon gift card or not, because they want their friends and family to come to you because you are the guy that they should see. You've treated them so well. Yeah.
I can totally think of some patients that Chad has just because I follow Veranda Dentistry's social media account that I know absolutely love Chad and the team. Yep. So I'm sure you get those, Chad.
Well, number one, they're the people that are always commenting below our stuff, even on a dumb, stupid video where I'm just being corny and stuff. They'll post because they feel like they're part of, my family and part of the brand and stuff like that, so they truly are the brand ambassadors, type that, and then what's also interesting is we'll even showcase them. So if someone brings in, some snickerdoodle cookies or, stuff like that, we'll post a picture and be like, wasn't it so nice that Janet brought these in? And you know what that does subconsciously is some people go, oh, well, I mean, if they like that, maybe I should, do that. And even when we do the patient of the month stuff, we choose patients that we like, and we tell them, I when I hand them a gift card, just saying, this is just a thanks for being awesome. We love awesome patients, and we love celebrating awesome patients. And out of all, like normal world that grinds against, how that person annoyed me, and when I was trying to hear how it's like we just focus on the negative so much. We want to just focus on the positive, and in their mind, the next time someone says, I just like focusing on the positive, they might say, my dentist says that too. And, or, you're a positive kind of gal. Have you ever been to Dr. Chad and his team? Cause like, they're awesome, or this or that. So like, we're just focusing on the positive and trying to stay in that, mindset. And then that seems to, bring some of it back to us as well. So.
Yeah. And really, Reagan, also the next steps to start internal referrals are just asking. Chad, I'm sure you have patients that are saying, are you accepting new patients? Sometimes patients just don't know. So I always recommend in a morning huddle, look through the schedule, find the patients that would be great ones to ask, and then just simply have a conversation, at the end of the appointment when they're already telling you how grateful they are for you. That's an easy segue to say, you know what, we would love to have more patients just like you. We would love to see your friends and family. We would welcome them into our practice. We're happy to take any referrals from you. It's just a very simple conversation, but sometimes they don't know that you're accepting new patients. So I encourage the team to ask on several patients every day.
Do you know what your referral index is, Chad, right now?
It seems like, Sarah, we talked about it at our last quarterly meeting, and I think it was 10-ish%.
I will tell you right now, I just pulled it.
Yeah.
And we don't have to put this in. I was just
I really don't mind, but I actually think mine was 10%. And I was actually shocked that it was that low because, you feel like, they talk about that it should be higher and stuff, but I'm just like, I don't know. It seems like we get around 10% or something.
So right now, but we just found out that through Dental Intel, there was a glitch. Referral sources weren't being attached. Oh. So I have you at 2%, but Sally and I have already communicated that because the referral sources. So I don't have an accurate number right now until that glitch is fixed.
So let's go over that question. Strike that question, Rick.
Okay.
Well, and I just even just go, I don't, 2% like, or whatever. I don't even think of that as like, when I think, I don't know if it's cockiness or whatever, but I just go, I know that whatever the actual number is, and that should be something objective, it should be. But I just go, whether people are flying under the radar, I know that within our culture, people love us. And there are people that don't, and they move on. I mean, I'm not saying, all people at all times love us, but I'm just saying we have a good culture of things going on. And as much as it is the Chad show, on social media, because the ladies don't really like being on there much. Within the office,
just the Chad show.
Within the office, it's not. People love Shonda. People love Melissa. People love Amaya.
How can they not? Your team is amazing, Chad.
Right. So what's funny is I'm just like I'm kind of the the eye candy to get people in the office. No, I'm just playing around, but what's funny is
Are you though?
Hottie McToddy.
You better believe it. But in the office though, the authentic relationships are with the people that they're spending a lot of time with. And I don't mind that. Yep. I just get to be goofy and put on the gorilla suits and stuff like that. And that gets people, a little bit more, a little less reserved to give our office a try. And then come to find out that, they'll really love one hygienist. That hygienist will be gone because their kid is sick or something like that. And then all of a sudden they switch to a different hygienist. They're like, well, I love being with that one too. And it's like, I bet you do. Of course you do, but they were really brand loyal to that one hygienist. And then come to find out, oh, I love both of those hygienists. So it's like, actually, if you used any of our 4 hygienists, you'd love them because we don't have hygienists that you wouldn't love.
Yeah. I have a question for both of you because it's an assumption on my part and it's filled with a lot of personal bias. So I want to test this. to me, and you'll notice I go into my feelings, it feels like internal marketing is an investment that takes effort. Whereas if I go external, I'm pushing a little bit of an easy button because I'm most likely, as a dentist, transferring it to a third party. And I'm a little less responsible for that. Sara, I see you nodding. Is that an assumption does that ring true to you?
Yes, it is an investment, and it takes everybody in and on the team participating in that. And that's what I teach to teams a lot is, you are a crucial part of this. We have to have the phone conversions. We need to make sure that there's a system in place following up on treatment reactivation. That requires someone taking ownership of it, documenting it so that there's clear communication throughout the practice of why that patient didn't accept treatment. There's a system in place, how to reach out to them. Continuing care is the same way. Asking for internal referrals. That's not necessarily always coming from the doctor. So it is an investment for the team, and every person needs to take ownership and accountability to make the internal marketing successful. But it's also very, very profitable and rewarding because it now is geared towards bringing the patients that you really want. You're also growing the practice without investing in external marketing. And yes, the internal then amplifies the external messaging that you're doing.
So this segues really nicely into one of the metrics that you measure, patient lifetime value.
Yeah.
I don't know how many practices are measuring patient lifetime value. I assume, Chad, you are, since you're working with Sara. This is something that you have a keen.
I personally don't. Like when you said that, I was like, oh, that's a good point. And in a hypothetical sense, but I'm just like, practically, no, I wouldn't know.
Yeah. No, it's important that we have metrics around everything that we do. So for example, I have a doctor that said to me, hey, I really need to cut back on external marketing budget. Like I just need to cut back. We're trying to do different things. I'm in transitioning in the practice to do different things. I'm like, okay, why is that? And when we got to the root of what was going on, and because I had the metrics for it, I was able to show him, because he's been practicing for so long, that each patient, quote unquote, the lifetime value. And we know that can change as you have attrition and, as they move and that sort of thing. But his patient lifetime value was so high that by tweaking and by implementing those internal systems, because they had them previously, but then, change of team and stuff, it all happens, right? We become complacent and you kind of start to gear off the road a little bit and a little bit more. And then next thing you know, it never happens, right? But when we got the team realigned, we pulled in the metrics because I wanted the team to understand, hey, I'm not asking you to ask for referrals because I'm trying to be mean and I want you to have all these, strict rules.
You're torturing them daily, pulling them out of their introverted shares when they just want to be servant leaders.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm like, listen, this isn't about adding more to your plate. I don't want to do that, but I want you to understand why it's so important. And so we shared the metrics with the team, and said, hey, I know you all get bonuses. What if I told you that by simply doing these few systems and implementing them and communicating as a team, you all would bonus substantially more than you have ever bonused. And at that point, the team was like, what? I can bonus? And so the doctor's like, well, yeah, because we're increasing, our productivity, the revenue, our collections, all these different things. And yet he's not spending any more to do it. So, it really becomes this all hands on deck to get, to a point where it's an investment, but you will never regret it. And you will get the goals that you deserve. And then we know how to get you there simply because we track everything. It's important to know what's going on. I think there have been times that I've even said to Chad, like, hey, what do you think's going on your end? Are you seeing some of those patients that we've been trying to attract? And Chad's like, well, I don't know.
Right?
Maybe.
Check with my team.
Yeah, right. And so then we pull the actual data and I'm like, Chad, we, did this and this and this, and we attracted this. And he's like, oh man, okay, right? But you
Right?
don't necessarily know
No.
unless we're tracking it and putting metrics to all those things. That is so critical because now it's measurable and the team understands that. And that's what we need.
Yep.
I have another assumption. One last question for you. My assumption is that if you have a strong internal marketing game, that both your internal marketing and external marketing will see an increase in the average patient value for people coming in. Tell me about that and what you see with average patient value for the internal resources coming in and then the external. And do you see that increase? Like, I don't know, how am I doing my hands here?
Yeah.
Parallel, congruently?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is about trending up. And Chad is one of those. He is the perfect example of that. As we become very focused on what we were doing for him externally and the messaging that's attached to that, but then through implementing the systems internally, so bringing in Dean, making sure that the social media messaging and what's going out is congruent with all the external pieces, making sure he's got Joanne as well. She is phenomenal at phone coaching and making sure that the call conversion rate is where it should be. Because if we're driving new patients, then they better be getting in, right? All of those things. So yes, all of a sudden, those patient values continue to rise because one, he's getting the patients that he really wants that are higher production because we're increasing internal referral sources. Two, the messaging's consistent and it's not only externally what we're putting out, but now they're also seeing Chad in the gorilla suit or seeing Chad and his team doing fun stuff. They know more about who he is. It's that authentic messaging. And then, now it's like all those things are coming together to have this beautiful, cohesive, robust internal and external marketing strategy.
Yep.
Yeah. So everything trends up.
That is absolutely fantastic. I think you've given listeners a lot of beef and a lot of things to consider and look at their practices. Chad,
Well,
do you have one last question?
Well, the only thing I was going to say was, then when you've aced this or mastered it better, dialed it in, then you can start to consider, are there PPO plans that we could drop because we're getting the patients that we want rather than being at the mercy of the insurance company sending us the patients that we want. And we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. No, but I mean, Chad, you bring up a really good point is we are taking through, I want to say 4 or 5 doctors right now that I work with that are transitioning off of all PPOs. They've grown their practices. We have the authentic marketing. Yeah. They've taken the steps and the next step now is, hey, I really just want to work with the patients that align with my core values. And so we're taking them through that. And that in itself, I mean, we could do a whole nother podcast on the preparation that it takes. But that is internally your greatest asset to prepare for a transition like that is you have to have the internal pieces ready to go and a solid foundation. And what we find when we do that and we go into it with a good strategy is that the attrition is far less than what it would be, just being like, all right, I'm doing it. I'm getting off, you know? So
without that in place, you're a reed in the wind. I mean, you're just being blown.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So the biggest thing that I tell doctors is I say, I know when we think about marketing, it really is, we think tactics, we think external, we think websites and Google and, direct mailer. And yes, those are all really, really important. But your main focus should always be internal. I'm always referring back when I meet with my clients, and Chad, you know this, about the internal systems, because that is the foundation. And then we build everything else off of that. When your foundation is solid, you have the systems in place, your team's on board. I mean, then, the sky's the limit for how well you can grow and be seen and really be successful.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sara, thank you so much for your time today. I know you are a busy woman with a lot of hats, and Thank you for sharing this value. I think it's very important for everyone to hear.
Yeah. Thank you. I love being here. And I could talk marketing all day.
So
all day,
is the
every
H
day
on the wall behind you for Hansen or hot marketing tips?
Ooh, probably both. It depends.
Yes, that was the
am I
answer.
in mom mode or am I in work mode?
The answer is yes.
Yes and yes.
Yes. Well, Sarah, again, to reiterate what Megan said, thanks for coming on. I'm sure you've actually got another phone call to do. So you get going. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the weekend.
You're welcome. You too. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Everyday Practices Podcast. Chad and I are here every week thanks to our community of listeners just like you, and we'd love your help. It would mean the world if you can help spread the word by sharing this episode with a fellow dentist and leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Do you have an extraordinary story you'd like to share or feedback on how we can make this podcast even more awesome? Drop us an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts from Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentist.com/podcasts. See you next week.